Today we're talking about setting work boundaries to open up new opportunities. And I am sure that you have experienced probably at one time or another, either getting ready to leave work or maybe even on your way to work, you find out there's some issue or there's some problem. It's going to drag on your day. It's going to mess up your time. It's going to mess up the plans that you had, all these different things, right? So, as you're making that transition into corporate, not into corporate, out of corporate, and as you're making that transition into your full-time entrepreneurship, one of the things that's important is beginning to set some boundaries. And you can go the hard way and sort of stay boundaryless and be at the mercy and whim of whenever they need you, however they need you. They know you're going to be right there to deliver, and then suffer some stress for your own self on the back end. Or you can start to get a little bit smarter about the boundary lines that you draw. Now, to be honest with you, depending on the type of role that you are in, this may be a little more challenging. And for others, it may be a little easier. So if you happen to be in a role in corporate that is like an operations role, it's a support type role. I have to be here at this time and that time. It could be a little bit more challenging versus you're in a role where you can kind of come and go as you please. There may be some standards of when you should be in the office or all that stuff, but you can pretty much sort of dictate, well, I've got a meeting here, I've got a meeting there. I know, and people trust me to bring myself where I need to be. Okay. So, depending on where you fall on that spectrum, you may or may not have a few challenges. So, a couple things that I want to go through today, and I've got my notes, here. So I try to stay away from slides just to be purely in engagement. So if there is a question that you have for the person that is watching live, if there's a question that you have, you can feel free to always pop it in the chat, comments, anything like that as we go along. All right. So the first thing here, I'm just going to reflect for a second. So for me, when I was transitioning out of corporate, so I began to draw these boundary lines, and they showed up in different ways. One of the first ways that it showed up is, this is pre-COVID when I was doing my transition. So this is pre-COVID. So one of the first ways it showed up was I had made this conscious effort and statement to say, hey, so I had made this conscious effort to say, all right, I am going to work from home on Wednesdays. Wednesdays, no matter what is going on, Wednesday is my work from home day. Now, again, I have a role where work from home, this is pre-COVID, so work from home, completely acceptable, not a big deal. But I consciously said to myself, Wednesdays, I'm not in the office. I don't care what's going on. And I think I made an exception for that maybe twice. I think I made it, and hi, Tamika too. I think I made an exception for that maybe twice, but I got committed to the fact that my boundary lines are on Wednesday. There are some other things that I can get in for my business, so it's very important for me to be here and take what I need to take right from my home, right? That was the first boundary line. So the second boundary line that I drew was I started to not take any meetings after 4 p.m. in the office. So the way this showed up is, somebody may have booked a meeting with me at 4:30 or 4 to 4:30, or like, God forbid, 5 o'clock, which I really was never like, who needs to do business at 5 o'clock in the office? Either way, I stuck to the fact that if you were booking 4 o'clock or later, you automatically knew, whether I replied to your invite or what, that, hey, I can talk to you on the phone, but I have to be on the move. And that was just a boundary that I drew for myself. I knew I wanted to get back home at a certain time. I didn't want to be there all day. Here was a boundary line that I needed to put in place. Now, a couple other things. So as I got closer to leaving out of corporate, I started to come in the office a little bit later. And again, here's where it depends on the kind of role that you have as to whether or not this is something that you can actually do. It depends on your role. But I started to come into the office a little bit later, not take meetings before 9 a.m. And a lot of those meetings would be like one-on-one meetings with my team and that type of thing, not necessarily project meetings and stuff like that. And so people began to get used to it. And by the mere fact that I was already a high performer, so you expected that I was going to deliver. So that's the important part. You still have to be able to maintain your level of performance, right? And what people have come to expect for you, but just draw those boundaries. So for me, that 9 a.m. buffer and not getting there until 9 a.m., it started to allow me to act the way I wanted to act once I became free. And by that, I mean, I wanted to be able to see my kids off to school. And if you were on the earlier live when I was talking about creating time and how we kind of get into that mode of time creation, one of the things that I had missed so much being in corporate was always leaving and not seeing my children. And so that was something that was very important. So I had to draw that boundary line around, all right, when am I going to be in the office? You know, what things will I be taking on the phone while I'm in the office? So again, just another boundary line. Now, as I've told you some of these things, I want you to think about, just get your wheels turning on what some boundary lines could be for you, right? That you could start drawing. What could they look like? And you can type it in the chat. If it comes to you, go ahead and drop it in the chat. Now, when we talk about drawing the boundary line and then moving that into opportunity. So for me saying on Wednesdays, I'm going to be working at home, that allowed me to get my podcast recording done, right, with people all over the world, get that done. And also allowed me, as I was hot and heavy with my agency, when I first started my agency, I had a focus in Wisconsin, and so, which is where I live. And so that allowed me to run away for a second, right? Take a private appointment for a second and go meet with a prospect at a client office and then come back. The place where I worked is a little farther away. It's downtown. I live more into the country. And so just drawing that boundary line allowed me to have a little bit more control in what I was doing in my business and the new opportunities I was creating. Is this making sense? If it's making sense, just type, yeah. Kendra, my boundary is to no longer work through my 1 hour break. Yes, but take that time to work on my business. Yes, 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 yes. So that was another thing. And I feel like I had this maybe in another series. I don't remember, not in another series, but in another live. But I remember it came to me when it came to lunchtime. When it came to lunchtime, I had began to really use that time for my business. And you know, for some of my pals, my friends, who are kind of like, okay, can't kick it with us anymore. Or God forbid, the people who decide to schedule meetings over lunchtime, right? When you get intentional and you know that you're on a path to do something different, it becomes easier to make that choice. But you have to consciously be the one to make the choice. Nobody is going to make the choice for you. They will just as easily take that time with whatever, whenever. Okay. So the other thing for me, and I kind of talked about this earlier, when I started sort of arriving a little bit later and doing my first meetings a little bit later, just the fact that it allowed me to begin to really act in that reality as if, yeah, I'm in control here, right? This is my life. I am in control. And the truth is, you are in control. You're always in control. But it allowed me to start to really breathe that thing that I was looking forward to, right? The control of my morning, the seeing my children, that type of thing, just by setting up that boundary. Now, one other boundary that I didn't mention, and then we'll get into some that you can consider as well. So one of the things I didn't mention is I had taken about three months. It was the summer months. And was it the summer months? Maybe it wasn't the summer months. Either way, it was 3 months. And I had decided that I was going to take a half a day vacation. Excuse me. I was going to take a half a day vacation every other week. for 3 months on a Monday, every other week. And the whole idea was that that half a day that I used, that was for me, and it was for me to work on my business. Now, again, pre-COVID, the girls were in school. I had that half a day. Like, it was all to me. And I had created that sort of structure and that boundary line of, all right, Monday, come 11 a.m., I was like, I'm done, right? I'm out. It's time for me to work on my business. And that's just another thing that you can think about, even when you think about your vacation. Again, some people have the luxury, depending on your role, to be more flexible with vacation than others, but starting to be creative in sort of outlining spaces for yourself within what you have is a great way to continue to just sort of push forward. All right. Everybody still with me? If you're still with me, just type yep in the chat so that I know. And let me scroll down so that I'm not missing anything here. All right. Okay. So now that you've started, and Tangier, I know you've already started thinking your 1 hour break. Continue to think about what boundary lines you can draw. Now, here are some other thoughts. Again, if it's feasible with the type of role that you have. So the first one is thinking about when you are available in the AM or the PM. And when I say that, I mean, you may normally come into work at, I don't know, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 7:30 a.m., whatever it is. But how do you align your expectations for when you work with others? I know what it's like to experience, oh, okay, I'm gonna plan to start at this time, but then you may have people that are texting you or calling you about things at random times in the morning. You set the boundaries and the way that you sort of expect that interaction. Again, unless your role calls for something different, that you have to have that flexibility. The other thing you can think about, and especially now that we're in this COVID world where there are so many people who are just working remotely, which is a blessing if you're trying to get out of corporate. But there's so many people who are working remotely right now. Another one of the boundaries that you can think about is, will it be, I'm only taking phone only meetings, or my video is not on at a certain time, and maybe my video is on at a certain time, or I'm actually on the Zoom at a different time. And the reason I say these small things, because they make a difference, right? Let's assume that, you needed some extra time to get ready so that you can go to do something else for your business. So you being on video at a certain time during the day would prohibit you from doing what you need to do. Again, just the small things add up. So thinking about that in terms of your boundaries will be helpful for you also. Now, if you are if you're using like Outlook or Google Enterprise or whatever to manage meetings in the company, the other thing for you to think about is when you block your time off. So like Tangier, I don't know if this is the case for you or not, but quite often, if you are in a space where you've got your calendar open, let's say for lunch, at least through my experiences, people will happily find that lunch spot because it works for everybody, right? So people will happily find that spot to book meetings in, or this or that. And sometimes even if you have it blocked, people will book over it, of course. But starting to be intentional about your time being sacred at different times. Maybe you have 3 to 3:30, there's something blocked on your calendar that's a private appointment that allows you to do something very specific that you need to do or get done, whatever it is. But think about your boundaries in terms of your calendaring and what you block off for other people's visibility. And then the last thing was just the one that I mentioned about the vacation time. So just thinking creatively about how you can utilize that and really stretch it out to give yourself, it's really giving yourself really some consistent space and runway for your business that's outside of just working in the evenings and on the weekends, okay? So here's what I want you to do, and I'm pretty much done here. So if you have a question, feel free to type it into the chat. But here is what I want you to do and walk away with and just think about, right? So I want you to ask yourself, and I'm saying this time frame very specifically, but I want you to ask yourself, if I had a half day during the work week just to work on my business, what would I kind of get done? Like what would I accomplish? What would I look for? What what could I make moves on? And the reason I want you to think about this very specific thing, and this is partly mental, is because it's going to help you sort of say, all right, so I'm missing out on my opportunity to get this done, and this done. All right, wait a second. Let me go back to the drawing board and again, see how I can maybe draw in some boundary lines, hold some people off here, do this, do that, what I can do to begin to get that for myself. Okay. So that is your homework. What could I get done if I had a half day to work on my business during the week? Then start thinking about the boundaries that you can begin to draw. All right, so that's about all that I have for you guys today. Again, if you have a question, you can feel free to drop it in the chat. Do say hello. If this made sense to you, just give me a makes sense. If you're confused, give me a I'm confused. Whatever it is, let me know if it's resonating with you and if it's helpful for you as you continue to just push forward in what you're doing. Record my podcast. All right, that's what I'm talking about. All right, Tamika. Yep. Tangier. Okay, good. Now, one thing for everybody that is watching. So tonight, as is the next few Thursdays, the next 11 Thursdays, 10 Thursdays, whatever it is. Speaking of podcasts, so myself and my business bestie at 7 p.m. We are going to be going live with other Black female entrepreneurs on our new show, Socially Correct. And the issue tonight is the idea or myth of work-life balance. So you may or may not find that interesting. I'm sure you'll find it interesting. And the timing with what's going on here in this series is just amazing. So hope to see you over there. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening. Talk to you guys soon.